Roughly 60,000 home purchase agreements fell through in June. That's nearly 15% of the homes that went under contract, the highest percentage on record, with one notable exception, the very beginning of the pandemic. Jeff Tucker is a senior economist at Zillow and joins us now. Jeff, this is an ominous number. What does it suggest?
Yeah, this tells us that the housing market has absolutely shifted. Buyers have just been hitting the brakes in June. And apparently what this data shows is that includes buyers who already made and had an offer accepted on a home. It also suggests buyers are finally including contingencies again in the offers they made this spring, which gives them that possibility of opting out. Now, why are buyers hitting the brakes? I think it's affordability. That combination of higher mortgage rates and higher home prices means that the typical mortgage payment is up over half, about 60% in just the last 12 months. So a lot of buyers either said, you know what, I can't afford that, or they had to hear the bad news from their mortgage lender who said, you know what, after all, where mortgage rates are today, you can't afford this house and I'm not going to give you that loan. So there's been a little bit of walk back in mortgage rates in the last couple of weeks, and it still remains to be seen whether that will actually kind of translate through to buyers picking up a bit more momentum.
So do you see this as a turning point, or is this perhaps just a temporary situation we're seeing?
I think it is a turning point. Anything is temporary on a long enough timeline, but this is a necessary cooling down and rebalancing after we've just had the most unbalanced, overheated housing market on record. So buyers are pulling back. That's step one. Inventory is beginning to climb. And then the last domino to fall really is that starts to push home price growth back down. So we should expect it to kind of level off, or especially in maybe some very overheated markets of the last couple of years, actually turn negative and actually see some modest home price declines in certain parts of the country.
But Jeff, you don't see any signs of a looming crash here.
That's right. Because this is being driven by a demand pullback, one silver lining of that is there are millions of interested home buyers with good credit, solid middle or upper middle class incomes who are still on the sidelines, who are maybe taking a break. But a lot of them are in that critical mid-30s cohort, this big millennial cohort we've heard a lot about, who are planning to jump in when they start to see some bargains again, when they start to see some more variety of good options. This is not being driven by a supply side crisis of foreclosures and a glut of inventory where people are willing to take a big price cut to unload it. We don't see any sign of that. The current home buyers have plain vanilla 30-year fixed rate mortgages. There's very little reason or kind of signal of distress in terms of any foreclosures coming down the pike.
So in terms of people who are looking for a bargain then, where are you seeing the prices most likely to fall in terms of the regions and the metro areas that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, the top places that we are keeping an eye on for this turning point would be the San Francisco Bay Area, including all the way to Silicon Valley, Phoenix, and Austin. We look at the Bay Area because back in 2018, they led the country in terms of price declines. And 2018 was the last time we saw a major mortgage rate spike. So we're already beginning to see a similar phenomenon now. And certainly a lot of the big employers in the Bay Area, if you've been watching the NASDAQ, you know that a lot of their employees might be having trouble coming up with those down payments at the moment. And then Phoenix and Austin stand out as just two of the markets that kind of went the craziest in the pandemic. So they seem to have some kind of room for mean reversion. And now all three of those markets that I picked, those are the three markets that are closest to their pre-pandemic June 2019 inventory levels. In the rest of the country, it's still down pretty substantially from that kind of pre-pandemic benchmark. But these are markets to watch because we're finally seeing signs that there will be more homes available than there were on the eve of the pandemic in those markets.
You mentioned inventory. Are we seeing it across the country begin to open up? And I just quickly want to see if you have a take on what Fortune magazine says is the most overheated market in the country. Boise, Idaho, they say is 73% overvalued since the pre-pandemic. What's ahead for Boise?
That's a huge spike. I can't comment on that methodology, but Boise was kind of this pandemic era housing market darling, where it's kind of in the sweet spot of a more affordable alternative to Seattle, San Francisco, and so on. Still get the mountains, still get great skiing and everything. So they got a big surge of demand. And for such a small market, that really sent things into overdrive. So I would definitely include them on the list of places likely to have a slowdown, likely to have a bit of a course correction here. In terms of 73%, I can't really comment on that, but that's the type of market, frankly, the inland West in general, that also extends to a lot of markets in Utah, also Eastern Washington, like Spokane. Those were some other medium to small markets that got a huge demand influx and are now dealing with, a bit of that demand outflow and kind of figuring out what the new normal is.
And obviously, when we were seeing a lot of buyers trying to scramble for these homes, waiving all kinds of contingencies, paying overpriced, but now that we're seeing this shift, what do sellers need to do to make sure that their homes that they're pricing out there are competitive?
Step one is to work with a great local real estate agent who can give you a feeling of the pulse of the local market. They need to be in there talking to other agents of how did that listing just last week go? What did the offers look like? So they can guide you to kind of pick the perfect list price. I think that's the key thing. What we've just seen in the last month in June, we had a huge surge in the number of homes with price reductions. That means those were sellers who kind of extrapolated from April and May, thought that prices would keep rising, and they got kind of wrong-footed by the market. What I'm hearing is even in places like Seattle and Portland, also very expensive, starting to have a bit of a cool down, the homes that are priced to sell, the homes that are priced in a way where the seller's not trying to mess around and trigger a bidding war, if you are priced to sell, you can actually get an offer and still sell your home very, very quickly. The median time for a home to go pending right now is still under 10 days nationally, which is incredibly fast. That suggests a lot of sellers are setting the right price, not getting too aggressive or trying to kind of bite off more than they can chew.
Seeing a bit more balance then coming into the housing market. Thank you so much. Jeff Tucker there, Zillow's senior economist. Thank you so much.